Hi, thanks for joining me and welcome to the channel. If you've not been here before, welcome back if you have. So the subject of today's video is very much following on from my video of 2 weeks ago, the Sonny Rollins video, which I'll put a link to up in the top corner here. Okay, do check that out if you're interested. And this UHQR was released on the same day as the Sonny Rollins, and there is so much in common between these two releases. Okay, I'll just run through some of those similarities. So, like the Sonny Rollins, this was recorded in 1957. It was recorded by the same engineer, Roy Dunan, and the producer was Lester Kearney of Contemporary Records. And being recorded in 1957, it was recorded in stereo as well as in mono, but the stereo mix is incredibly naive, just like the Sonny Rollins, exactly the same. You've got the band in the right hand channel and you've got the soloist or band leader, in the Sonny Rollins case obviously Sonny Rollins, and in this case Art Pepper in the left hand speaker. And that's, it is absolutely as naive as that. But with that, same as the Sonny Rollins, with that, you get some magic too, because that simplicity, naivety, if you like, in the production, in the mix, is what it leads to is a startlingly real, vivid, and there, in person, in the room, with the musicians, kind of reality that it literally can't be beaten, and it's very rarely even equaled. This is just as good sound quality as that Sonny Rollins. It's staggering. Okay, but just now let me talk about the recording and set the scene a little more, and I'll start off with this basic, in inverted commas, issue. As you can see, I've just picked this up for £29.99, £30. It's incredibly reasonably priced. This is a brand new, it's currently available anyway. I think it was released last year on the Contemporary Records Acoustic Sounds series. Now, for those who don't know, Acoustic Sounds is a hi-fi record retail business, online business, and it's owned by Chad Kassem. Now, Chad Kassem also owns QRP, which is a pressing plant, and is a pressing plant that it may be equaled, it certainly isn't bettered. It is, at worst, equal best pressing plant in the world for consistency and quality, as far as I'm concerned. And I have got hundreds of records that are pressed there, so it is, nowhere's perfect, but this is as damn close to perfect as you're going to get. Okay, so £30 for a QRP pressed record is no bad thing whatsoever. What's also interesting here is this is mastered from the original analog tapes by Bernie Grundman. And Bernie Grundman, I think his first job in the music industry was working at Contemporary Records back in the 60s. So I don't think he worked on this first time round, but he was there right from the start. And he certainly worked with Lester Kearney, who was the producer but also the label owner at that point in time. So if we talk a little bit more about the recording and the band here, so to speak. Now, Art Pepper is a West Coast jazz saxophonist, and the rhythm section here is, you can't see under this label, but it's Red Garland on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and Philly Joe Jones on drums. Now, the really interesting thing about this rhythm section is this is 1957, so absolutely around this time, and maybe for a year or so prior to this was Miles Davis's rhythm section. And if you think of the Miles Davis albums, Cooking, Relaxing, Steaming, or more specifically Cooking with the Miles Davis Quintet, Relaxing with the Miles Davis Quintet, Steaming, okay, that's a quintet. So that band includes Red Garland, Philly Joe Jones, Paul Chambers, and John Coltrane and Miles Davis. So if you drop John Coltrane out to turn that into a quartet. Then you take Miles Davis out, pop Art Pepper in, and that's what you've got. So really, this is the band, the rhythm section from those Prestige albums, you know, working, relaxing, cooking, steaming, which are absolutely probably my favorite, you know, within my favorite top 10 Miles Davis albums. They are so swinging. It's so just the energy, the light, the bounce, the groove, the swing of the music. It is just absolutely everything that I love about Miles Davis and about jazz. So what you've got here is a real cooking combo, okay? But also what you've got here is a real cooking combo recorded by, whereas the, you know, for Prestige, they were recorded by Rudy Van Gelder. You have a different approach here. So the engineer on these is Roy Dunan, and the producer is Lester Koenig, who owned Contemporary Records back in the day, who founded Contemporary Records. And this is absolutely at the beginning of stereo. So stereo vinyl was introduced in 1958. This is a 57 album, just exactly the same as the Sonny Rollins that I featured a couple of weeks ago. So on release, this was only available on vinyl in mono, and the following year it came out in vinyl on stereo, hence, you know, the very big kind of stereo logos all over the place. Stereo was absolutely a new thing in this point in time. And less like the Prestige and Blue Notes and other early stereos of the time. This was very much a sort of quite a naive left channel. You've got the soloist, the band leader, in this case Art Pepper. In the case of the Sonny Rollins, you've got Sonny Rollins on the left. And then on the right channel, you've got the rest of the band. So with Sonny Rollins, that was bass and drums. In this instance, it's bass, drums and piano. Okay, and it makes for quite an unusual listen until you sort of get into it. And I think you will get into it very quickly, because the music just it so swings, and this so captures the energy, the timbre, the texture and the tonality of the performance and the instruments, that you will just be sitting there kind of almost looking at your right hand speaker, just looking, you know, as if it's a mono recording, just entranced by this phenomenal band. And then by way of almost a conversation, because they really are there in front of you, it'll almost be like, oh, and then there's Art Pepper sort of responding, and then the band comes back and, you know, almost answers, and then Art Pepper comes back, and it's just like the Sonny Rollins. It's some people will hate it. I fully appreciate that. I don't. I absolutely love it. And there are positives to this, but I'm going to save the positives for talking about the next version, okay? So, you know, this is a really beautiful, really swinging, really easy to listen to. It's almost like you've kind of got the big band sort of swing jazz of the sort of the 40s, and just sort of touching on the more sort of modern, you know, kind of free jazzy, bebop-y kind of thing of the sort of the 50s. But it remains incredibly palatable. Again, very much like the Sonny Rollins. I think this is you know, Lester Koenig started this label, and I think he just thought this is palatable stuff that's going to sell. You know, it's going to be popular, and you know, of the era, this is kind of almost like pop music. It's so listenable, so enjoyable, and for £30, you know, you've got here an all analog cut by Bernie Grundman on really good 180 gram vinyl, pressed at QRP, of a fantastic recording of a fantastic band. It's absolutely beautiful. This is 100% recommended. And in terms of value for money, this is absolutely knocking it out of the park. This is just, if you don't have this already, just get it. You cannot go wrong. It sounds phenomenal. Okay, now that leads me on to the real main subject of this review, which is the Analogue Productions UHQR release. Now, as I've already mentioned, Acoustic Sounds. This is a retail business owned by Chad Kassem, and QRP, who pressed this, is a pressing plant owned by Chad Kassem. And Analogue Productions is a record company owned by Chad Kassem. And this is really taking that same recording and pulling out all the stops to make this as absolutely good as it possibly can be. And I explained when talking about the Contemporary Records Acoustic Sounds series release how kind of there was a magic to that early naive stereo, and it's really realized here. Now, I will kind of go through and show you what you get in this set, but first of all I really want to describe the sound, because the sound is what makes this worthwhile. Okay, now the thing about this really early 57, 58, well 57 it was recorded, recording studio situation is stereo hadn't been invented yet, well, for vinyl. It was a very niche thing. Sure, you got stereo reel-to-reel tapes, but that was an incredibly niche market. So mixing desks, they hadn't really been developed and well, let's say invented. I mean, mixing between left and right, there was no call for it until now. So the mixing desk that was built to record this, all it really did is took the few channels of microphone input channels and mixed them and then sent them to a stereo Ampex tape recorder. Okay, and I believe they were passive. Even if they weren't passive, they would have been all vacuum tube or valve, depending on how your terminology. Very simple basic circuitry, and the purity of this recording is staggering. Again, just like the Sonny Rollins. Okay, so I'll start off as we start playing this. We go straight into the first track. The first thing you're aware of, and this is all in the right channel at this point in time. Okay, you've got the piano. It's so rich. You really are aware you're hearing the full spectrum of the piano, from bass to treble, but tonally, timbrally, the feeling, the dynamic intensity, the attack, the sustain, the decay, all of these things are they will leave you breathless. As I said already, this is a sensational record for the money, right? It really is. If you buy this, it'll be, no one is going to buy this and be disappointed with the sound quality. But you get the UHQR, and it redefines what you may think of as reality. The dynamic intensity and the presence of that piano, with a complete and utter absence of brightness or harshness or grit or grain, is staggering. And then there's the bass, and this is all in the same speaker. Okay, this is all in the right speaker, but the bass, it's deep, it's minutely detailed and textured. It's again the attack, the sustain, the decay, just absolutely and utterly captivating. And again, the drums, from subtly brushing to the thud of the bass drum, the sound of that, it is so real as you'll have ever heard before. It's staggering. You will be sat there just thinking, wow, this is impressive. It's vivid, and it's explicitly taking you into that recording environment, but without any harshness, without any brightness, without any cause for fatigue whatsoever. And then suddenly, if you imagine you're sort of looking here at your right hand speaker, and then suddenly just over there, the sax comes in, and it's soft, but it's not soft in a diffuse, vague, veiled way. It's soft in a textured, creamy, caressing way, and you just hear the sort of the intonation, the expression, just every every bit of emotion and expression that Art Pepper's putting into blowing through the reeds into that instrument, and it is just staggeringly real. Okay, so this whole thing, it just, the first track kind of flows. You've got sort of intro sax, then you've kind of got back to the band, you've sort of got a piano solo, then it kind of sax comes in, back to the band, sort of drum solo, back to, and then finally a sort of a bass solo with piano accompaniment and hi-hat. And it is just, you're captivated. And yes, it's a very unusual stereo arrangement. It's very, very unusual. But in my situation, my speakers are about 2.5, 3 meters away from my ears. If you imagine that that's where you're sat with relation to the actual players playing in this band, if you're sat that close to a band, a 4-piece band, depending on where you're facing, then it could be that, like, you've got the band there and one player's just slightly off to the side, and that's just how it is. And you very quickly, or I very quickly, get used to this, and I don't find it odd or distasteful in any way. But the sonic quality, and as we go through from track to track to track, the sound, everything, the sound of the liquid agility of the saxophone. There's points where Philly Joe Jones hits a tom, and it's you can just you can hear and see pretty much in the sound stage. You can actually see, I've written here, the tom, I think, it sounds like it's about 18 inches diameter and about 24 inches deep. You really get the feeling of how big that tom is when he hits the drum, the kick drum. It's you feel, the beater head just burying itself, its face into the drum skin, and it's damping it as it hits it, kind of thing. It is absolutely stunning. It really, really, really is. And it's along with the Sonny Rollins, I think these two records are stunning. I'm so pleased I bought them, because it's almost like an antidote to sort of modern recording. Overly complex, 48 channels of recordings, all with so much dense mixing. And I mentioned this in the last in that previous video. Think of a modern mixing desk, for each channel, say you've got 48 channels, each one of those you've got a level control, you've got sort of EQs and filters and sort of panning controls, and just the unbelievable sound, amount of control and that you get over, a modern producer gets over each individual channel is phenomenal. But all of that, even if everything's left flat or bypassed on that mixing desk channel, there's probably 30 kind of closed relays that you have to go through, which still all add noise and just detract from the immediacy and the absolute presence of being there. And that is utterly, entirely absent on this. And if you think of other recordings of that sort of time, I mean, Kind of Blue was 2 years later than this. You got a much better kind of stereo spread in Kind of Blue. But this is more there than Kind of Blue. And that's something about those old mono records, those wonderful Prestige records that I was on about, which feature this same kind of rhythm section. There is a being there-ness and an immediacy about records made in the 50s, because just the process of making records got a heck of a lot more complex very, very, very quickly. after kind of the advent of stereo in this period in time. So these are, you know, they're absolute gems from the very, very, very birth of stereo. And as such, they represent some of the most entrancing, captivating, natural sounding, just entrancingly real, beautiful sounding records ever made. And, you know, like Way Out West, the music is really, really, really accessible. If you had half a dozen jazz records and that was it, I would include this one on your list. It's stunning. It's absolutely beautiful, absolutely captivating. This is just a fantastic thing. So, in addition to the wonderful, spellbinding, utterly entrancing sound, what do you get for your $150? Well, you get a really, really elegant and sturdy box. And let me open this up. You can see, I think the gold lining is particularly nice. It's sort of, it feels kind of appropriate for the era of the recording. You get 2 LPs because this is cut at 45 RPM by Bernie Grundman, again, same as that Contemporary Records Acoustic Sounds series. That's cut at 33, but this is cut at 45 RPM by Bernie Grundman on an all analog system, and it's pressed on Clarity vinyl. And Clarity vinyl is just supremely quiet. And again, it is, by having such an amazingly natural and present recording, and pressing that on such utterly deathly quiet vinyl, the end result is you've just never heard anything more in your room and more real and natural sounding than these records. They are absolutely stunning, okay. What else we get? Well, here's the kind of cover, so to speak, and I'm just going to put this down. So you get this reproduction of the original cover, and it's in a matte finish. It's almost kind of got that rubberized texture. It is just beautifully smooth, but fully 100% matte. And we've got some notes here by John Koenig, who's Lester Koenig's son. Great photo there of Art Pepper. Okay. And then on the back here, this is a sort of reproduction of the back of the original cover. These are numbered. This is number 182. On this edition, there is only 2,750 of these being made. So it really is a kind of a, you know, an artisan, bespoke, handmade kind of just pull out all the stops to get absolute perfection type of record. And as such, I think it's worth absolutely every penny. And, you know, some great photos of the band. Here's Art Pepper, Philly Joe Jones on drums, Paul Chambers on bass, and Red Garland on piano. And there they are recording, and as you can see here, this is on the afternoon of the January the 19th, 1957. It's absolutely stunningly beautiful. What else do you get in this box? Really nice booklet, actually, with notes by John Koenig and Bernie Grundman. As I say, Bernie worked at Contemporary from the 60s. And this is Lester Koenig, who founded the label, and John, his son, who took over following his death. And, you know, it's a beautiful booklet. It really, really, really is. Well worth having. Very nice indeed. Okay. This is, I think you can see here, this is a very, very kind of early mixing desk. There's not much to it. And that the fact about that is you can't reproduce that these days with modern equipment. There's far too much electronics in the way, in the signal path. There's far too much going on. Yes, it gives incredible flexibility, but it also adds veils and detracts from the absolute connection between the listener and the recording, or the listener and the musicians, you know, the performance It really is. This is something else. You know, it's something else. Here's a little certificate which just, you know, says that this is part of a 2,750 limited edition run. And, you know, that's Chad Kassem there, who owns the label and the record, well, the label, the pressing plant and retailer. This technical sheet here explains the UHQR process, the clarity vinyl. It's not just clarity vinyl. Even the profile of the record is not the same as a standard record. Standard records thin down as they get towards the edge. The UHQRs are 200 gram. Every single thing about this is made for perfection. You know, no compromise whatsoever. This is an advertising flyer, and then this is just the, you know, the numbered kind of hype stickered wrap that came with the set. Okay, so I'm just going to pop all this back. Those two beautiful records, and that's what you get. And you know, the price of this is $150. It's you know, it's where there's no question this is an expensive record, and the price of this is £30, which is without any shadow of doubt an undeniable bargain. But is this, let's say, 5 times better than this? Yeah, it is. Basically, it's one of the most stunning things you'll ever hear. It's utterly captivating music. You know, you might hear things as good as this, you might, but I don't think you'll ever hear anything better than this. This is as close to the sound of real instruments, real musicians being right there 2 or 3 meters in front of you as you'll ever experience. It's magic. Okay, on that note, I'll say thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye now. Bye.